Welcome to this explainer, everyone. Today, we're diving into a highly focused, honestly fascinating textual investigation. We're looking at a unique structural analysis of one of the world's most studied texts, the Quran. Now, if you're someone who loves patterns, structures, and, the hidden architecture of words, you are going to absolutely love this. We aren't just looking at what a text says today, but exactly how it's built. We're going to examine a highly precise mathematical arrangement highlighted in our source material, and it centers entirely around a single, very specific mystery: the number 60. I want you to focus purely on this number for a second. Just lock it right there in your mind. In the vast, sprawling text of the Quran, we're talking about a book with tens of thousands of words, super complex themes, historical narratives, extensive legal guidelines, the whole shebang. This specific number plays an incredibly peculiar role. The source we're analyzing today hones in entirely on this two-digit figure, and it presents a claim about its placement that is just, well, it's wild.
So, this brings us to an immediate question, right? How many times does the number 60 actually appear in the entire text? Think about it. We see numbers like 7 or 40 or 100 popping up quite a bit in historical and religious texts. They're often used to signify magnitude or completion. But what about 60? Just take a quick guess in your head. Given the sheer length of the book, you'd probably expect it to show up, a few dozen times? Maybe scattered across various stories or commandments?
Section 1. The number 60. Well, the answer to that question is astonishingly low. Out of the entire Quranic text, according to our source material, the number 60 is mentioned exactly one time. Yep, just once. A single, solitary occurrence in the entire book.
Section 2. The Quranic passage. Now, because this number only appears once, we can pinpoint exactly where it lives. To really get the mystery of its placement, we first have to understand the narrative logic of the passage itself.
The passage kicks off with this quote, "Those who pronounce zihar among you from their wives." Okay, so let's unpack this briefly based on our source. Zihar was a specific pronouncement. It was basically a practice where a husband would estrange his wife by declaring her to be like his mother's back, so essentially an ancient form of separation mentioned in the text. The verses here are addressing this exact situation, declaring it wrongful, and then setting up a legal and moral framework. It tells a person exactly how they must repent or make expiation if they want to, go back on their word and reconcile. The text lays out a very specific sequence of actions required to make things right.
It lays out a descending order of alternative expiations for this act of zihar. Step 1, the text says a person must free a slave before they touch one another. But what if they can't do that? Step 2, the text says they have to fast for 2 consecutive months, again, before they touch. But what if they are literally unable to do even that? That is when we hit step 3, the final alternative. They must feed 60 poor people. And there it is, right at the very end of this logical progression of conditions, the number 60 finally makes its one and only appearance in the entire text.
Section 3. The exact word count. Our source now invites us to shift from just reading the text to actively investigating its physical architecture. We are going to measure the exact distance from the very beginning of this subject all the way to the moment the number 60 appears. Count the words with me if you please.
Seriously, put on your investigator's hat with me for a second here. The source begins counting right from the opening premise we just looked at. Those who pronounce zihar among you from their wives. The count moves systematically through the condemnation of the act, through the mention of God's forgiveness, and then sequentially through those stipulations. It counts the words for the first condition, freeing a slave. It keeps counting through the second condition, fasting for 2 consecutive months. Word by word, the count progresses steadily toward that final alternative condition. The tension kind of builds as we approach the very final clause of the subject.
And the count arrives exactly here, right at this climax, feeding 60 poor people. The source emphasizes this specific wording. In the original Arabic text, the words carefully build the sentence, setting up the exact moment the numerical value is spoken. فَمَنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَإِيدَةٌ وَإِطْعَامُ سِتِّينَ مِسْكِينًا, meaning, but he who is unable, then the feeding of 60 poor persons. The counting halts right as it hits the word for 60.
And guys, here is the absolutely astonishing conclusion to this mystery that our source reveals. When you count every single word from the introduction of the subject of zihar right up to the exact word for 60, that word is, remarkably, precisely the 60th word in the text. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. The word representing the number 60 is literally placed as the 60th word in the sequence of the subject. No way, right?
Section 4. The perfect arrangement.
So you see, we really aren't just looking at a number anymore. We're looking at a profound claim about a perfectly calibrated structural arrangement.
We have a perfect mirror effect going on here. On one side, we have the numerical value, the quantity of 60 poor people that must be fed. And on the other, we have the exact physical position in the text, the 60th word. The value and the location are perfectly mirrored. Our source uses this juxtaposition to prove the claim that the text's words are arranged with extreme mathematical deliberation. It argues that this simply cannot be arbitrary. The wording is purposefully designed so that the phrase feeding 60 poor people arrives precisely to complete 60 words. It's like a giant puzzle coming together.
To wrap up this fascinating structural analysis of the source material, a quote from elsewhere in the Quran is brought in to summarize this divine precision. It reads, "A book whose verses are perfected and then presented in detail from one who is wise and acquainted." The source uses this structural alignment, the number 60 appearing exactly as the 60th word, as a definitive example of this perfected arrangement, and it leaves us with an incredibly compelling final thought to take away. When we're reading ancient texts, how many other hidden architectures and structural mysteries are hiding right there in plain sight, just waiting for us to count the words?